Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, October 10th through Sunday, October 16th, 2022. This week is the last week of Libra already. Both the Sun and Venus will be entering Scorpio in my next week's forecast on the 23rd of this month. And Mercury will actually be joining Venus and the Sun before they leave Libra. Mercury will be entering Libra at the beginning of this week. So really this week the focus is all about Libra pretty much, with the Sun and two inner planets there. And I wanted to talk about not only that, but also this huge kind of air focus that we have. It's not super dominant, but with Sun, Venus, and Mercury all in an air sign, and then we also have Mars and Saturn for that matter in air signs too. So I wanted to kind of talk about these air themes that we're going to be dealing with, and again, like I kind of alluded to, this will all be changing pretty dramatically. We're going to have a lot more of a water focus, a lot more of a Scorpio focus going into next week. So a lot is going to change here. But for this week, we still have that air focus. We still have the Libra focus. So that means, air signs are all about relationships, especially Libra. So as a whole, as we experience the beginning of autumn in the northern hemisphere, that's kind of what the theme is about. Libra loves to date people. Libra loves to interact with different people and just experience the different sides of themselves that come out when they interact with different people. So that's kind of the focus that we all go through in early fall around this time of year. And I'll always say this. I'll say this over and over again. But if you want to know specifically how this affects you, you have to see where these things fall in your chart. So where does Libra fall in your chart? Is that your first house and that's like your whole identity? This is your time to shine, or is it in some other area for you? That's what you'll have to see to see how this affects you personally. But for everyone as a whole, it's kind of like courtship, dating, talking to people, chatting, all this kind of social stuff. That's kind of what Libra is about, and that's what air signs are about in general too. Air signs are very cerebral. They love information. I've talked before about how they almost don't care whether it's really deep, complex or profound, like highbrow information, or if it's just more shallow, kind of crude, just gossip or whatever. They just love all information. And air signs are also, it's kind of like the people element. So not only is it having to do with sharing information, but also air signs love people. They're interested in people. So, there's this kind of social dynamic and informational kind of oriented dynamic as well. So those are kind of the general themes that I can kind of rattle off that we're still experiencing this week. But again, there's going to be that transition from air to water, from Libra to Scorpio. It's very natural, I think, when we are in such airy environments, if that makes sense, for this illusion or conjuring up of water. So let me explain what I mean by that. So air signs are cerebral, like I said, they're very curious, and they're interested in people, so they're forming those relationships, and inevitably, as those relationships start to form, they get deeper, and life happens, things happen that conjure up that deep emotion that comes out with the water signs. So that's kind of how that typically works, moving from, really light and breezy air energy, informational energy, detached, to water, which is so much more emotional. And it's kind of exciting, really. The plot kind of thickens, as we enter Scorpio. Like Libra is a lot of fun and all, but it's just more kind of cerebral, it's more detached. Things feel a lot more heavy and more real, like more intense, when we enter Scorpio. So again, depending on your chart, you may enjoy that. That may be your thing, or it may be kind of more foreign to you. We all experience these things differently. But those are the main events that are happening right now. Wrapping up those themes of Libra before we intensify things as we get into Scorpio next week, and then Mercury entering Libra as well. And I wanted to mention that this is the last week that Mercury will be in its post shadow. Mercury will leave its post shadow once it gets to 8 degrees Libra on Sunday, October 16th. And what that means, in case you're not familiar, is basically Mercury is still traversing the area that it was retrograde over last month. If you remember early last month, Mercury was in Libra. It made it all the way to 8 degrees Libra before it turned retrograde, went back into Virgo. Now it's direct, so it's moving forward, just entering Libra, but it still has those kind of final areas to go over. So what that means basically is like this week we're still dealing with the same themes that we dealt with all of last month during Mercury retrograde. But this is the easy part. We've already like gone back and it was dysfunctional, and we may have talked to people from our past, and kind of weird things happen that end up showing us a different perspective, or we get a lot of information through that dysfunctional time. So now we're kind of done collecting that new information and reflecting and all that. Now we've kind of done all that work, hopefully by now, and then now we're applying it. So in other words, during the Mercury post shadow, you're still dealing with the same themes of Mercury retrograde, but in a much more linear, forward moving type of way. We're wrapping that up and moving on. And I think this is something we'll especially experience now that Mercury is going to be in Libra this week, because again, Mercury was already here. We were already kind of in this territory on one level or another, but now we're hopefully wiser and moving forward. Okay, so starting out this week, Monday, October 10th, moon is in Aries still, so we're still coming off of that full moon we just had the day prior. So still, a lot of energy, electricity in the air. We're still vibing from that full moon, especially because it's an Aries full moon, so that is pretty intense for sure. But today, the moon will actually leave Aries and enter Taurus, so that's a much different dynamic. Moon is exalted in Taurus, so this is kind of like the quote unquote best sign for the moon to be in. Moon represents how we are emotionally, how we feel, it's our instincts. And in Taurus, Taurus is such a even keel, steady, grounded, practical sign. So you can kind of see why the moon is exalted there. We may be a little bit more grounded or wise, practical, etc. with the moon in Taurus. And it looks like it'll be kind of afternoon Eastern Standard Time that the moon enters Taurus. And really, now that the moon will be in Taurus, there's a lot of Venus energy, because not only do we have Venus in domicile in Libra, so Venus is very strong, we also have Mercury will be entering Libra as well today. So we have Sun, Venus, and Mercury all in Libra, which is ruled by Venus. And then we have now Moon in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus as well. So that's a lot of Venus energy, a lot of Libra and Taurus energy. So I kind of like this. Venus is a benefic. Venus brings love and abundance and desire. It's all about, pleasure and things like that. It's about aesthetics and having pleasurable experiences. That's what Taurus and Libra are kind of all about. So we can kind of be maybe a little bit more polished, a little bit more pleasant and easygoing with this type of energy. And one other thing going on today, we also have Venus opposing Chiron. So that's kind of interesting. Venus is so strong. It's all about Venus, I think, in this chart, like I kind of just went over. But at the same time, Venus makes this very interesting connection to Chiron. I think this is actually potentially pretty cool. I've talked about this before in previous forecasts. Chiron has been in Aries since 2018. Since that time, everyone's been a little bit triggered, easily offended, a little bit sensitive. But, the positive side of that is that I think people are demanding more respect or empathy, understanding. Sometimes that can come across in a kind of brutal or destructive way, but there has been positivity from it too. But this aspect, I think, can really bring some softness, much needed kind of softness or empathy to the mix. Because Chiron and Aries is, we're all kind of like, I've compared this to, us being like screaming babies, kind of. Aries is such a primal energy, and especially when you have Chiron there, which is all about, trauma and wounds, it's so sensitive. We're all like outraged or so upset. And we want empathy, but we're kind of focused on ourselves in a way. So it's a little dysfunctional. But when you add in this opposition with Venus and Libra, this adds kind of the opposite energy. Venus in Libra is all about cooperation and being diplomatic and, understanding where other people are kind of coming from, what's their side of the story, and things like that. So, long story short, I think this aspect could be really good for having like deeper conversations or understanding one another. Maybe learning about someone else's past or sharing something from your past, having these kind of like therapeutic connections and conversations, all that kind of good stuff. And it's, these things are heavy. This is kind of sensitive. It's not fun to kind of do all this stuff, but it can definitely be very rewarding. Oh, yeah, and I wanted to mention too, if you have planets near 14 degrees of Libra or Aries, especially, but also Capricorn or Cancer, you will be affected by this more so, more dramatically. Um, the way I experience Chiron aspects is they're very awkward. I think the awkwardness just comes from that increased empathy. Sometimes, like I think empathy can be kind of glorified. You can have too much of a good thing. And when all that kind of baggage and these past emotions come to the surface, sometimes we're not ready for that, and sometimes other people aren't ready for that either. So it can be a little awkward, a little sensitive. So just something to think about as we start out here on Monday. Next, on Tuesday, October 11th, Sun makes a trine to Saturn. Sun at 18 degrees Libra, trining Saturn at 18 degrees Aquarius. And Saturn is still retrograde. Saturn is actually about to station direct next week, but it's still kind of in the last stage of its retrograde phase here. So as a society, because Saturn has a lot to do with society, where we're at, um, as a society or a globe, or as nations, etc. Um, all of that is kind of going backward, so to speak. Like we're sort of paused, or we're ruminating, and there could be a lot of dysfunction that comes from that as well. So Sun trining Saturn kind of puts a spotlight on all that. It also infuses the Saturn energy into our day, like into our kind of day by day consciousness. So Saturn's a very heavy energy. It can make you feel bored or depressed because it I don't know, it's so sluggish. It kind of slows things down, but it demands us to be thorough and responsible, basically. So definitely not the most fun energy. It is a malefic, so it's like ancient astrologers kind of demonized the malefic planets like Saturn because they correlate to times of hardship. I think nowadays we try to look at the bright side and how can we benefit from this. And really, Saturn benefits us because it pushes us to be better, to be stronger, more responsible, more wise, etc. It's just not fun doing that. It's difficult. So this is a trine that the sun is making. Trines are harmonious, easy aspects, but still, it's an easy aspect with a hard planet. So there can be some kind of heaviness today, especially socially, because Sun is in Libra, Moon is in, or excuse me, Saturn is in Aquarius. So these are both air signs. They have to do with those human interactions again, conversations, etc. So you may be extra aware of your social responsibilities. What role do you play, and how what kind of obligations and commitments do you have socially, maybe with your family or with your work. Um, I don't know if that makes sense at all, but that's kind of something that we're all going to be exploring through this. And of course, just like with anything else, you have to see where this falls in your chart to know how this will affect you personally. Um, I think on the bright side, this could represent us. I guess I kind of outlined it already. It's just us being stronger and being more aware of our duties, our responsibilities, obligations. This could represent like a turning point, rising up to meet some kind of new challenge or burden, responsibility, etc. Let's see what else. One last thing about that too. It could have to do with maybe like having to help others, be reliable for someone, teach someone, something along those lines. So the air signs are kind of, they want like integration, they want collaboration. This is the energy of like teamwork type of thing, camaraderie. So there may be some kind of challenge there that will push you on Tuesday. And that's pretty much it. Moon is still going through Taurus on Tuesday. So all in all, I kind of like this for the beginning of the week still, for Monday and Tuesday, with we're kind of just cooling off from that full moon we had on the weekend still. So, we've got some like easygoing, relaxed, harmonious, diplomatic type of energies going on Monday and Tuesday. So yeah, it looks pleasant. It looks nice. And, if you are one of those people that has a Monday through Friday work schedule, it looks good for productivity too, because Sun in Libra doesn't get enough credit for being so business minded, business oriented, but it is. A lot of those social skills and the diplomacy is really great for business as well. And then Moon in Taurus, is supporting us in being, I don't know, efficient, productive. Taurus is an earth sign. The earth signs are all known for their kind of good work ethic, and they're very productive. So these energies look very relaxed, but if you have to get a lot done, be productive, really they look good for that too. It looks like kind of an easygoing start to the week here. Okay, next for Wednesday, October 12th. Moon continues through Taurus. It does cross over Uranus. And this is really interesting because, since 2018 as well, just like Chiron and Aries, Uranus has been in Taurus. And it's interesting when planets cross over this point, because typically Taurus is such a steady energy, but Uranus is pretty much the opposite. Uranus is unpredictable. It's wild. So there will be this kind of blip here. It'll be very quick, but looks like morning Eastern Standard Time. There may be some kind of twists and turns, unpredictable shifts. These may be, I wouldn't think they'd be too massive unless you have a lot of personal planets right around 17 degrees Taurus. If you do, you're going through a lot of life changes right now with Uranus crossing through here. But for the rest of us, there may just be a lot of kind of shifts or weirdness, unpredictability. And again, it's kind of just funny because this is generally, like, outside of that, it looks like a really calm, kind of stable energy for this really the first half of the week. And even after this aspect is done, so like afternoon Eastern Standard Time, the moon will already be kind of cruising along, separating from that conjunction with Uranus. So things will already be getting more kind of stable and easygoing once again here. Okay, and then what else? We also have, well, we have two aspects happening on Wednesday. So Mercury will be at 1 degree Libra, and it will oppose Jupiter at 1 degree Aries. So Mercury's actually starting to gain momentum now. It was so slow and sluggish coming off of that Mercury retrograde phase. Now it's gradually kind of building up speed, and you can see that because it will actually move more than a degree today. Actually, I'm not sure if that's accurate, but it'll change degrees today. So early in the morning Eastern Standard Time, Mercury makes that opposition to Jupiter. This aspect is really great for having interesting, thought-provoking conversations. Mercury is now in Libra, so it's supporting that energy I talked about at the beginning of this video, the Libra energy. So Mercury's in Libra. This means that we're thinking and communicating more like Libra. So we're more focused on information and diplomacy and building relationships, things of that nature. That's and we're thinking in a more maybe detached kind of way, just focused on this information and the words. So now when we compare and contrast that with Jupiter and Aries, Jupiter and Aries is such an expansive energy. It brings some warmth and charisma and vitality. What else? And just sheer kind of optimism. Sheer optimism. So combining these, and one other thing too. So Jupiter and Aries is more about like philosophy is kind of a Jupiter thing, like philosophy, religion, language. I don't know, these kind of like abstract concepts. So combining these two energies with this opposition, it just makes for a lot of really good opportunities for like conversation and digesting maybe some complex information or having some really deep talks. And also, since it's happening in the Aries Libra axis, this is probably the best axis for socializing too, because you have that combination of Aries, which is self-expression, and then Libra, which is empathy and diplomacy. So combining those is like gold for having really rich and interesting conversation. So yeah, maybe a really great day for learning something new, having an unexpected, really great talk, maybe learning something through that, maybe talking with someone who sees things a different way than you. That could be really interesting. Um, yeah, and it is an opposition. Typically, oppositions are difficult. It's a hard aspect. But Mercury and Jupiter actually mesh pretty well together. Their themes are opposite in nature, but both have to do with branching out and experiencing something new and learning about something. So, because their themes have to do with integrating something different from ourselves, their energies mesh well together. I don't know if that makes sense if I explain that in a way that's easy to understand. But long story short, really great day for having good conversations or learning something new. Okay, and then one other aspect on Wednesday, we have Mars squaring Neptune. This is a little bit different. This kind of throws a monkey wrench into it a little bit. You can still have those great conversations, learn something new. All of that is still on the table for sure, of course. But Mars squaring Neptune adds a little bit of dysfunction. um, this is a really interesting one. So Mars and Gemini, Mars has been in Gemini for actually several months now. It's been an unusually long amount of time. Since Mars has been in Gemini, it's kind of made us a little bit more angsty socially, a little bit more like witty and like quick witted. But now we are clashing this energy with Neptune and Pisces. So this adds a lot of delusion and confusion and seeing things with rose-colored glasses, or we could go the other way and be paranoid. It's hard to quantify things. Um, and this aspect is a square, so squares are um, tense, angsty. Especially Mars is kind of a tense energy too. Mars can be a little bit volatile, and then when we're clashing that with Neptune, which is kind of delusional and kind of puts a mist over everything or a fog. Um, this could be confusing. It can be dysfunctional, especially socially. So we may have a hard time. Um, I don't want to say understanding each other, but I don't know. We may misinterpret things. So it's really interesting, especially comparing and contrasting like these two different aspects. One is supporting really rich conversations, but then we have this other one which is confusing things, and things can suddenly flare up and become dramatic, even though they may it may be an issue that's very trivial, or something may seem more important than it actually is, or something may seem less important. It's hard to make those judgment calls or to know how to prioritize things, if that makes sense. Okay, so make of that what you will. I know that was kind of a mess, but that's what this is. These aspects are kind of a mess together. Um, I don't know how else to put it. Mars square Neptune, it's dysfunctional. Mars is the warrior planet, warrior god, and then we're mixing that with Neptune, which makes things confusing. The one like positive side of Neptune though is like, it is very subjective in nature, but just because something's subjective doesn't mean it's wrong. We can all, it's kind of like artwork. We can all have a different experience, or we can have the same experience, but experience it in different ways, and therefore it is different, but it's all true. If that makes sense. But these things can become really convoluted and confusing. Especially Mars adds so much like tension and anxiety, especially in Gemini, which is such a nervous type of energy, or nerve related. So it can make us a little bit sensitive or confused today. Okay, going forward to Thursday, October 13th, Moon will leave Taurus and enter Gemini. So this is pretty cool. Moon was pretty, it was a good time with Moon in Taurus, all those Venus vibes for most of this week here. But it's really great for having Moon in Gemini as well. Moon does pretty well in Gemini. Gemini is such a light and kind of detached, easy, breezy sign. It doesn't like to get super deep into things. It likes to just kind of keep things shallow, and that way it can get a lot of variety going. So Moon is in Gemini now, so that's how we're feeling emotionally. And because Gemini is an air sign, there aren't a lot of super deep emotions. It likes to keep things light. So this can actually work out pretty well with Moon and Gemini. We can kind of just be more playful, or just kind of be detached enough to have fun, to learn about things. I think it's not a coincidence that the air signs are all detached and they're also about learning. Sometimes being detached allows you to have maybe a wider range or a different range of information and experiences. Um, so anyway, we're combining Moon and Gemini with the Sun, which is still in Libra. So that's a lot of air energy now. I talked in the intro about air energy is cerebral, it's detached, it's focused on people, relationships. So that's very much where the energy is all focused on. We're very curious about one another. We want to talk to each other, talk about each other, build those relationships. What else? Learn something new, come across information. Gemini loves this. Gemini is known as the talker of the zodiac. So yeah, really, that's kind of where the focus is on, and that's the main thing happening for Thursday. We are gradually stepping into what will be a waning trine that the moon will make to the sun. The moon still has a lot of light. It's losing light each day. Um, but yeah, at this point, moon is stepping into a trine. It's trining by sign. Sun is in Libra, moon is in Gemini. These signs trine each other. It's just that the moon is not yet aspecting, like, to the degree making that trine. But as we get closer to having that trine between the moon and the sun, it's a much stronger, like, easygoing, fun type of energy. Trines are easy. Trines are fun. So that's kind of where things are shifting on Thursday. It really looks like a fun day. I think things can be a little bit more lively on Thursday because the first half of the week was so kind of easy going and refined, polished with all these Venus energies. Now with Moon and Gemini, things can be a little bit more sporadic, a little bit more fun or kind of wild. Air signs like to get weird, especially Gemini and Aquarius. Libra is a little bit more refined and wants to make sure everything is, aesthetically pleasing and kind of perfect in a way. There's a little bit of neuroticism that bleeds over from Virgo into Libra, I think. So Libra still wants everything to be kind of refined and perfect in a way, but we're mixing that with Gemini, which is a lot more experimental in nature. So I think we can have fun with this and be kind of playful, mentally speaking, with this energy on Thursday. Okay, great. And then going forward to Friday, October 14th, Moon continues to cruise on through Gemini. Looks like very late in the day, in the night of Friday night, Moon will approach and cross over Mars. So this kind of easygoing, like, easy breezy attitude that we established with Moon and Gemini does change dramatically, but only for a short time. If you're up Friday night, people may be a little bit irritable or competitive. Um, because Moon is crossing over Mars. Mars is the energy of, like, testosterone, so it's competitive, it's edgy, it wants to fight, or it wants to attack or accomplish something. It can be very ambitious. It could also be very sexual. So yeah, there's this kind of, like, angsty testosterone based energy that we have late Friday night. But it is pretty brief. Moon will cross over Mars, and so going, by Saturday morning, I would say this will already have dissipated. Otherwise, on Friday, we do have one aspect. We have Venus trining Saturn, excuse me. So Venus at 18 degrees Libra early in the day makes a trine to Saturn at 18 degrees Aquarius. It's always interesting when Venus and Saturn aspect each other because I think they're very different in nature. Saturn, is difficult. It pushes us to be stronger, like I talked about earlier. Venus is kind of like the opposite. Venus usually bestows upon us, like, pleasure and desire, with us not really having to work very hard for it. But when we combine these energies like this, I think it could represent maybe getting a reward after working very hard for something. And, these are still an air sign, so it could have to do with some kind of social dynamic or information that you're coming across. Maybe, earlier in the week, we were all experiencing challenges with our obligations and, having to be there for other people, having to play a certain role. So now uh, things may have let up a little bit, gotten a little easier. We may have, I don't know, achieved something, and now we can like kind of move forward and relax a little bit, or maybe kind of enjoy the fruits of our labor, so to speak. So whatever it is that we've had to be responsible, whatever roles that you play, maybe now that you've put in the work, you can kind of enjoy those more. That's kind of how I see this for Friday. And with this, it really depends on where this falls in your chart. I know I'm gonna say that a million times, but is Venus, like Venus is at 18 degrees Libra, so is that in your 10th house? That might mean that you have worked really hard at your career, at your job, and that now you're shining, you're getting that attention, and you've accomplished something. Or is this in your fourth house? So this is happening in your home. Wherever. Just look to see where it falls in your chart here. But that's pretty much all that's happening on Friday. Really, a lot of what I said that started on Thursday continues into Friday. We're very socially oriented, curious, talkative. We want to learn. We want information. So this looks like a good vibe for a Friday for sure. Especially with that trine getting much closer. Actually, speaking of that, we do have that exact trine happening later in the day. It looks like late, like kind of evening, around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Moon will trine the sun. It's pretty close to Mars, so we still, I don't know. I think this could be fun though. There could be like a competitive energy that I talked about, but the moon is trining the sun at the same time, so that would support us being in good spirits usually. Everyone, you can kind of feel it when the moon is trining the sun. Everyone's in a collective good mood. Of course, there's always kind of outliers and different things happening, but that's the general theme though. That's the overall pattern. So moon conjunct Mars trining sun. This looks like a good time. Everyone's learning, talking, having a good time. But then there's that kind of angsty, competitive energy in it too. But that can be fun. Mars can be fun. Mars likes games. It likes to compete. It likes to win. So that's the energy that we're kind of being, I almost said bombarded by, or that we're embodying, I guess is a better way to put it. Okay, and then going forward to Saturday, October 15th, Moon will finally leave Gemini and enter Cancer. So as soon as it enters Cancer, this is much different. Something I talked about earlier applies here, where when we make that transition from an air sign to a water sign, for the moon in this case, it just represents all that curiosity and that openness that we experience during Moon in Gemini, that leads to the deep emotions and the deep experiences that come with Moon in Cancer. So I hope you understand that. I hope I'm explaining that in a way that makes sense. Being so open and curious and just open to so many different experiences and building those relationships, that's what triggers the intense emotion that comes with the water signs that always follow air signs. And this is especially true with the moon, because moon is how we feel emotionally. And as moon enters Cancer, it becomes, it goes back to its domicile sign. Moon is at home in Cancer. This is, one of the strongest signs for the moon to be in. This basically just means that with moon in Cancer, we all collectively have our best shot at really knowing exactly how we feel. And this is something that many people don't actually have. We're not really sure how we feel about things. It adds an extra layer of complexity, I think, if we don't even know where we stand with certain things, with issues or events in our lives. But with Moon in Cancer, we can be a little bit more intuitive and emotionally aware, emotionally intelligent. All of this is clashing with Sun and Libra, though. These signs do square each other. So we're stepping into more of a, what will be a square, a third quarter moon. That we won't actually get technically until next week's forecast, but we're stepping within range of it now. You can feel the intensity and the energy kind of start to ramp up when the planets aren't in the signs that they will make that aspect in, if that makes sense. In other words, we will have a third quarter moon in Cancer later. So even though the sun and the moon aren't squaring each other now, they're already in those signs that they will do that. So we're already starting to feel that intensity. It's kind of interesting because Libra and Cancer are more feminine signs, sort of. Technically, Libra is air, so it's yang, but it's ruled by Venus, so it's, both Libra and Cancer are about empathy and they're sort of service related. They have to do with helping other people, nurturing other people. All these things are kind of more feminine in nature. So it's interesting when they clash. There could be a lot of interesting social dynamics, kind of. I'm not sure how to explain that deeper. Excuse me. What else here? That's the main thing I wanted to say though. For Saturday, really that's the main event. Moon in Cancer. It's at odds with Sun and Libra, so we can all be a little bit sensitive. Excuse me. Um, Both Libra and Cancer, when we're mixing these energies, we can be very, I want to say neurotic or very like attentive to detail because both these signs are so sensitive. Libra is sensitive in a more cerebral type of way. Cancer is sensitive in a more emotional kind of way. But combining these, we could be very sensitive, very finicky with each other. We could be easily offended. Um, it's also interesting because I regard Libra as actually the least emotional sign. It kind of skates by. It's good at Libras are good at camouflaging themselves and coming across more emotional than they actually are. But Libra's actually very detached, and Cancer is the opposite. Cancer is about as emotional as they come. So combining these energies is really interesting with Sun in Libra, Moon in Cancer. We're combining that emotional awareness with the detachedness of Libra Sun. So that can be really rewarding for getting an interesting look at psychology of ourselves as well as other people. I don't know, maybe understanding emotions and habits on a deeper level. Because yeah, it's just that you can simultaneously engage in that deep emotion, but also be detached enough to observe it. That's something, people born with placements like this are excellent at that. So we all experience that to a lesser extent, just experiencing these transits. Hopefully that makes sense. I feel like I'm kind of rambling here. All in all, though, honestly, like if you're gonna do something fun or social, I think Friday looks like the better day in the weekend. Moon does cross over Mars, which can bring a little bit of volatility, but it still looks pretty fun as a whole. The whole dynamic, it looks kind of maybe a little edgy, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Saturday, though, looks more. I don't know. I think people could be a little moody today. So, yeah, if you're going to do something, I would say Friday you can go out more so. Saturday, it doesn't look terrible, but it's, you know, sensitive. It looks sensitive, kind of. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, going forward to Sunday, October 16th. Um, okay, so now we're getting closer to the third quarter moon, so we're still sensitive. I wanted to add something to that though. So, one plus side of these energies as well is that these are really great for art or being creative because knowing how we feel and being intuitive, all that good stuff that comes with Moon and Cancer. It's really great for like gaining inspiration and I don't know, using imagination too. And then Libra has to do with aesthetics. It wants to make sure everything's pleasing and pleasurable and aesthetically beautiful. So combining Libra's desire for aesthetics and beauty with Moon and Cancer, which is so passionate and emotional, this can be really great for maybe, I don't know, if you are a creative person, if you create art or if you write something, or even if your line of work isn't necessarily artistic, but if if you could use some kind of intuition or inspiration, you may find it this weekend. That's one good thing that can come from dynamics like this with Libra and Cancer. Otherwise, Sunday though, I think things will get more kind of angsty, tense as we approach the third quarter moon, because the third quarter moon will actually be the day after. It'll be on Monday, October 17th. So we're already, really approaching that. Third quarter moons represent a crisis in consciousness. So there's it's very action oriented, kind of like the first quarter moon, but third quarter moons are action oriented in a more non-physical kind of way. So it's more like in your head type of thing. It's a time for challenging ideas, challenging beliefs, shifting perspectives. It could be a time for physical activity as well, though. People are more wound up, they're more anxious, and they're more energetic because this is a time of change, basically. Third quarter moons are a great time to change things. So that's what we're already going to be experiencing Sunday, and like I said, really, if you're gonna go out this weekend, Friday night looks like the best time. Sunday, everyone's still kind of sensitive and maybe easily offended. It looks like a more the energy looks more suitable for maybe doing something introspective or more private, maybe starting something on your own, maybe, or with people that you already know. Moon in Cancer loves the familiarity of being with people that are familiar, doing things that are familiar. So maybe initiating some kind of change or action with something that's already familiar to you would be more suitable for this, I think, rather than having some like really big plan or outing. I don't think that would necessarily work as well here. One last thing that I'm going to say for this forecast: Mercury post shadow ends on Sunday as well. You're not going to necessarily experience like a big shift as this happens. It's more of kind of a gradual thing, but technically it does end on Sunday. So after Sunday, we're going to be in new territory as far as Mercury is concerned. So picking up a lot of new information and more new events happening. We're not so much dealing with the past anymore now that Mercury's finally leaving its post shadow area. So that's what I have for you this week. I hope that information comes handy for you. Next week, like I said at the beginning of this video, there's a huge shift. Sun and Venus enter Scorpio on the same day. So we're leaving behind this kind of light detachedness of Libra and really diving deep into, this really intense emotional territory that is Scorpio. We also have Saturn turning direct and a third quarter moon. So hope this information helps you, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. Take care.